current board member of Sister Cities International, and we're coming to you today with several success stories of partnerships between Sister Cities International and their international counterparts. So today we have with us Mayor of San Antonio, Ron Nirenberg, who is in his third term as Mayor of San Antonio and the former chair of SCI, Sister Cities International. We call it SCI. Good afternoon, Ron.
Good afternoon, Sherry. Great to join you today.
Thank you so much for being with us today. We're very excited to explore with our listeners about the path that San Antonio has taken in developing these international relationships. And so I'd like to start with, Ron, asking you, how many sister cities do you have?
San Antonio has 11 formal sister city relationships. Many of them date back many years, several decades. We also have several economic partnerships and cultural partnership agreements, as well as a few friendship city agreements, which are the first step to a formal sister city partnership.
Are most of your sister cities clustered together, or are they kind of spread around the globe?
We are spread around the globe, but of course we do have certain clusters, I would say, or multiple relationships in a couple of countries. Because of our cultural heritage, we have two sister cities in Mexico, and we also have two sister cities in Spain. And so those are obviously extremely important and part of the San Antonio heritage, but I am proud to say that we have formed very rich relationships, cultural and economic partnerships with cities around the globe, which are continuing to bear fruit for both of our communities almost on a daily basis.
I know one sister city in particular is a real success story with regard to a major employer in your city now. And I'd like for you to share with our listeners that story with your sister city in Japan.
Sure. Well, we have a long-standing sister city relationship in which I was able to celebrate the 30-year anniversary a few years ago with Kumamoto, Japan. And I think our relationship with Kumamoto is substantial and also is somewhat of a prototype when cities are looking to see how a relationship can develop and in the different ways that it evolves. Our relationship with Kumamoto is a wonderful example. It started really with friendship, with simple friendship between people. Former Mayor Henry Cisneros established a strong friendship with the Shirani family several years ago. And that paved the way for a formal sister city pairing that was signed in 1987 between San Antonio and Kumamoto. Obviously, a lot of exchange between the cities in the intervening years, artistic, educational, cultural exchanges, and even some economic partnership. And that ultimately culminated in something that I think San Antonio is known for now, which is an advanced manufacturing cluster that is formed around Toyota Motor Manufacturing. And the story on Toyota is significant because at the time that Toyota was looking to establish its major North American plant, San Antonio was not really on the list. But because of the strong friendship ties between San Antonio and Kumamoto, there was conversations that were generated about San Antonio and potential partnership with regard to Toyota. And eventually the decision was made. But the plant wasn't officially open until 2006. So almost 20 years after the formal sister city relationship was signed, did we see the opening of a Toyota plant. So significant activity and partnership and development had occurred before that. But the reason why I emphasize the point is that Toyota's presence now has really changed the shape, changed the nature of the San Antonio economy. Many people know San Antonio as Military City, USA. We're also a very tourist rich destination. We have our Riverwalk. We also are the site of the Alamo and the Spanish colonial missions, which are part of the formation of Texas. So very significant visitor destinations, and our economy was based on those two sectors. But the arrival of Toyota has really changed the trajectory of the city in important ways. With Toyota, along with other major manufacturers that have noticed the talent development because of the workforce needs of Toyota, we now have a aerospace manufacturing cluster, as well as biotech and biosciences. And we have the supply chains that have developed around each of those sectors as well. And today, I'm very happy to say we have not only one of our largest employers in the manufacturing sector, with all of those different companies now in San Antonio and growing and thriving in San Antonio, and the educational communities supporting their growth. We also have the presence of several dozen more Japanese companies. So it's been an ecosystem not only of manufacturing that has developed as a result of the relationship with Japan, but also a very strong binational presence for multinational and international companies that are based in San Antonio as well as in Japan.
That's really interesting, Ron. I realize getting Toyota to put their manufacturing plant in San Antonio was very significant in and of itself. But as we found in other cities, things like that seem to cluster and they multiply. And so whether it's a supplier for the manufacturing plant or a shipping company for the manufacturing plant, you usually wind up getting more than just that first thing. It generally builds upon itself. But it's so interesting that it began with a friendship. And that's really what Sister Cities is all about. So can you also talk a little bit about not just Toyota and what that brought to the table eventually, but the impact, the international relationships your city has with so many cities in other parts of the world, the impact it's had on your community with regard to building the diversity, particularly?
Well, San Antonio, we have always said in our 300 years of history is a confluence of cultures. We're very much a binational community with Mexico. In fact, we were part of Mexico for quite a long time. So we pride ourselves in being an international community. That is important culturally and educationally, but to really establish the formal ties between cities, that has really taken that kind of fabric of San Antonio to another level, particularly in our economy. We also have a strong relationship with Gwangju in South Korea. And we have now one of the largest solar manufacturing and solar production facilities in the country. We continue to grow in that sector, and it was largely because of the presence of OCI Solar that was made in the early 2010s. We are benefited daily by our sister city, our friendship city relationship with Tel Aviv and Israel, where we have done many exchanges to learn about water technologies and cybersecurity, which is also emerging sector here in San Antonio. We have, of course, strong relationships with our original sister city in Monterrey. And what I'm excited about there, Monterrey sister city relationship was formed in 1952, which actually predates the Sister City International organization itself. But Monterrey is a very rich relationship, not only because of the heritage of San Antonio, but because they're growing in very similar ways with regard to the evolution of their industries and embrace of clean energy technology, to the need for transportation reform, and also the presence of sports. And we've seen a lot of interesting sports diplomacy, sports exchange over the last decade with regard to Mexican soccer coming to host games here in San Antonio. We have some advanced discussions about how we want to continue to develop that. So, regardless of the sector or the particular cultural idiosyncrasies, there is a sister city pairing that will enrich a community. And it's really just finding the commonalities and making an intentional effort to develop them. But it has really made my life as a resident in San Antonio much more interesting and certainly the tenure as mayor and the stewardship of our economy much more prosperous.